we did a first pick. Me and my husband went on the picker, and I mean, I couldn't even see because I was crying so hard. I was just like, these are horrible. We're done.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
In this episode, we learn about a crop that was once called the forbidden fruit. It was illegal to grow in Washington State until the 2000s. Black currants. What do you know about black currants? I didn't know much, even though I knew they were grown close to me. So I went and visited a farm only a couple of miles from where I live and got the full story from their family about how they got into this whole world and who the people are who love black currants. You'll be fascinated by this. I'm Dylan Honcoop. This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. And we talk with Lindsey Van Dyken of Pangborn Farms and get the whole story here on the Real Food, Real People podcast as we continue our journey all over Washington State to get to know the real story behind the people who grow our food. So I think I know stuff about black currants, but I'm not really sure if I do because it's not like I've been around black currants a lot.
They're not common. I think I only know of 3 farms in Whatcom County, 4 farms that grow them.
Yeah.
2 farms that grow them somewhat commercially. There's only 1 that is mainly commercial. Most of our currants go directly to our customers. So, and then there's 1 other farm that sells directly to customers that I know of that's close by. Mm-hmm. And then there's 1 out in Blaine that is all organic, like super, like they only have a few bushes though, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think their prices are close to triple ours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
what is
experience?
Yeah.
Right?
Describe a black currant though.
Okay, so black currant I would describe as tasting like really healthy.
They're pretty tart.
So
right?
they're not like, it's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
I like them now, but when I first was here, my husband, we do this to everybody. Oh, try a black currant. You're going to love it. And they put it in their mouth and they're just immediately like, what did I just eat?
So is it just like tart and
it's
bitter?
Super tart. It's just got this like almost a Kai type of really, it just tastes healthy. You're like, wow, this is really healthy. So it's good for me to eat, but it's definitely acquired taste. And most of our customers will take it and mix it with half sugar. Mm. So it's so tart that it's too much for them.
Yeah, how are they normally used? How do people normally eat them who are really into black currants? Because I feel like I should be, but I haven't been.
So most of our customers, I would say probably 95% of our customers are Ukrainian or Russian. We've had people from Bosnia. I mean, first of all, that for me, with all the things that are going on in the world, right. It's just so huge to our customers, and my heart is hurting so much for them.
Yeah.
We love our customers. We have repeat customers. They come. We have people come from California and come get them, and what they do with them is a lot of them make compote, which is basically just boiled down currants with water and some sugar. I use honey. Some people like honey, but it's so healthy for you that, I mean, every single person that I've met out here and talked to, they're like, oh, it cures this and it helps this. And I'm like, these are all different things.
Yeah.
But they use it and they're like, it keeps us so happy. And they're just about the happiest people I've ever seen. And I don't think that's just like, oh, a facade.
Yeah. So what do they do with the compote?
They just drink it. A lot of people also will just mix half sugar and half currants, stir it up, crush it. They take all the little tops off of them, so that's a really time-consuming process. I don't do that. I throw all mine in a Vitamix and then put some in there and throw it in the freezer. But
a little extra fiber.
Yeah, right? I don't mind it. But it does make it makes it a little more bitter if you don't take those off.
Yeah.
So they will take that. mix it with sugar, and they just like let it set out. And there's so much pectin. There's so much natural pectin in currants. You don't need to add pectin. It's just
So it thickens and it's
sugar.
like a jam
They
spread,
stir it,
jelly sort of thing?
Yeah. They stir it up, and then they let it sit for a little bit longer. It pretty much preserves itself. They don't need to do anything to it. They just put it in jars and put it in the cellar. It basically goes on everything. Toast. I like to put mine in like a yogurt bowl with granola. So we do a lot of parfaits, and I can hide it, and then for the kids, will actually eat them, because I mean my kids do eat currants now, but there's not a lot of our friends that come over are like, no, this is not good.
Again, an acquired taste.
Yeah, no, but we have all these kids are in Russian it's smorodina. So they're like, smorodina, you know that? And I'm like, yes, we do. We just
awesome.
Yeah, just wonderful customers.
Imagine you could use that like on meats and stuff too.
Oh,
like,
yeah, people put it on
about,
lamb and
like the different ways you use cranberries.
yes,
same.
really. It's like it goes with savory stuff. So I was actually looking into making some for like the charcuterie board type things, because you can't find USA currant jam. I actually did a little research project, and I think there's 3 that I got from the US, but everything else was from overseas. And Greg Quinn in New York, he's high up in the currant industry. He actually was the one who got New York their legalization of growing currants again.
So wait, they were illegal to grow?
They were illegal to grow until 2003, I think.
What are they, like a drug or something?
So the story with currants is they're very popular in the UK, but over here there was a problem with the propagation back in the 1700s, and they became a host for the white pine blister rust. And that was a threat to the U.S. forestry industry. And so in 1911, they banned them. And they took everything out from the U.S., all of them. And they were growing in a lot of places. So red currants and black currants were both banned. And they still grew over in the U.K., so that didn't affect their forestry industry, I guess. But there were a lot of states. There are still some states in the U.S. that are not legal to grow.
So when did it become legal in Washington?
You know what? I don't know that exactly.
But like fairly recently?
Recently. We started growing them right afterwards, and it was in the early 2000s.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's
I had no idea. It's just like a fruit crop, but it was illegal.
Illegal.
Crazy.
Yeah. So they've become resistant to that. So there are different varieties out now.
So they don't have that rust, which is probably like a fungus, right?
Yes, and it wasn't that they were producing it, it's that they were actually getting it from they were just acting as the host, right? So so all the currants basically were taken out, and everything was over to the UK. And so all of the people who have immigrated here, the reason we actually even started selling currants was we had a lady drive by the farm. She saw the currants on the side of the road, and she got out. My mother-in-law happened to just be out. I don't know what she was doing, but this lady got out of her car and stuck her face in the bushes and just was like smelling them. She's like, wow, currants, I've not seen these. And most of them don't know the name. They know smorodina, but they're like, they don't know that we know smorodina. So they're like, the little black berry. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. How much do you want? And this lady's like, can we buy these from you? Because we were selling these all commercially. And they'd go to Canada, which is, I mean, nobody uses them in the U.S., so they all go to Canada. We were getting almost nothing for them, though.
So is that, like, they aren't common in the U.S. because of the whole ban thing?
Yeah.
Like, just people quit having them, and so it was a taste that was kind of lost.
Totally lost. Yeah. Which is so interesting. And the hardest part about that was that they're so healthy for you. They're so good for you. They're even better for you than blueberries are. And blueberries went through this craze, right?
Right.
They've got more antioxidants than blueberries, really high anthocyanin content, and the vitamin C. They have more vitamin C per serving than oranges, more potassium per serving than bananas.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really incredible superfruit, and they've been coined the forbidden fruit because of the ban on them. But my interest in this market is just to get currants in the U.S. because of their health benefits. I'm a big supporter of natural health, natural medicine, and food is medicine. I still eat terrible food sometimes, right? But don't we all? Maybe we don't. I don't know.
Some don't.
Yeah, some don't.
No, but that's what I'm a big proponent of, because I think all of that is true. I only think it becomes bad when people get like militant about it. That's what bugs me.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
And
let me make my choices. But
I've been that way too. I've been like, I mean, I don't shove my, opinions on others, but it's more like I was so strict about certain things that it becomes not livable. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. So anyways, adding these in to like, a week where I didn't feel good, I'm just like, I take a day or two and just drink some compote, and I'm like, I feel wonderful, I have energy. It's great.
Wow.
They've been linked to killing flu virus. There's been experiments where they put the flu virus in a petri dish with the blackcurrant, whatever they did. I don't know, scientific, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, me either.
But it killed the flu virus in it. And so I'm, with all of the COVID and everything going around, I'm just like, currants, And, it's hard for people to get access to them. Like right now, all I have is 40 pounds of frozen currants. We sold all of our currants last year.
Wow.
And last year, I would say for me, the biggest thing on the farm is that it's really emotional. You put so much time and energy and effort into farming this and making it beautiful. We had pruners come out here. You pay a fortune for it. And then, 3 days or 4 days before harvest, well, last year it was about 10 days before harvest, we hit 110 degrees, and we had over 100 for 4 days. And that just fried all of our berries. We were coming over here and just touching the bushes, and they would just fall to the ground. And that we did a first pick. Me and my husband went on the picker, and I mean, I couldn't even see because I was crying so hard. I was just like, these are horrible. We're done. This is our last year farming. Every year I say that. and so I'm a third generation business owner.
Yeah.
My parents, they had a power center. I mean, they were like a medium-sized business. They did very well. Both of their parents were business owners. Mm-hmm. And then here's Kyle, my husband, and he's a third generation farmer. And both of his sides of families were farmers. And so they're just like, we're never giving up because farmers don't give up.
Yep,
and
totally.
I'm like, but the profit margin, there's just none. And so I'm like, business person. I'm like, business. And so me and my mother-in-law, she's like farming, and I'm like business. And so that was tricky for a while.
Yeah.
And last year at that time, I was like, I'm out. I'm done. We put an APB out to all of our customers on social media, though. I mean, it was incredible. We were like, please pray for our farm because we don't know if we're going to have any berries for you. And they are very dependent on our berries. Mm-hmm. They last them all year round. And people come and pick like 100 pounds of blueberries, too, when they're here.
Wow.
So, I mean, most of our customers get between 80 to 100, 200 pounds of berries They're 1 carload. We'll have people come for 1,000 pounds, and they're delivering it to like their church members, or some people wholesale it too, which is fine. I don't just take the berries and go, right?
Yeah.
And
this is usually people from like Eastern European or like Ukrainian or Russian descent.
Yeah, 95%.
Crazy. Which we have a really big community.
Do you know the funniest
here locally?
The
right?
funniest part about that is they're not local. A lot of them are
Really?
not local. Yeah, we do have a big Russian Ukrainian community close, and that is the first. That was a lady who came here and was like, "You have currants? Oh my goodness!" So she actually brought that information to our church.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was up in Kendall, and she put it out. And then all of their members came, and then they spread it amongst their churches. So really, the church is what grew our customer base.
Wow.
And it's been amazing. Like they're so wonderful. So, anyways, we asked for their prayers, and with the other farm that I know of that had currants, they did not recover, and ours came back. Like, I was just coming out here in awe. I'm like, wow, there's more green berries. These weren't here. And they turned black, and I was just like, thank you, God, so much. And we successfully filled all those orders that year, and I just didn't think that we were going to be able to at all. I thought we're going to have so many people disappointed, because we will get people that come after our season's over, and they're heartbroken. Like, you don't have any, and we're like, well, they're kind of, they get to a point where they get rancid, and you don't want to pick them anymore. It's not worth it on the machine and all that. And I'm worried this year, though, about the rising costs and diesel. It costs a lot of money to run our machine.
Just a quick timeout here to thank our sponsors on the Real Food, Real People podcast. Mana Insurance Group, a faithful sponsor supporting last season and this season as well. They are a locally focused insurance outfit here in Washington State, and any kind of insurance product you can think of. They are involved with connecting customers with. They're not about pressure. I've known the guy who founded the company since we went to school together. We were in middle school together, in high school together. He's not a pressure salesman kind of guy. His whole team is not about that either. And I think you'll really appreciate the focus they have on planning ahead and making sure your financial future is protected, not just about picking up the pieces when things go wrong. ManaInsuranceGroup.com. Also, Dairy Farmers of Washington, sharing stories of the real healthy, ethically produced, sustainable dairy products here in Washington State. wadairy.org is their website. Go check that out. We've talked with many dairy farmers here on the podcast, and I grew up around dairy farmers in a county dominated by dairy farming, in families with dairy in their background on my dad's side and my mom's side. So love what these folks are doing here in Washington, and I love the stories that they're sharing, the information they're sharing about Washington-grown dairy products. wadairy.org. Go check them out and thank them for supporting the Real Food, Real People podcast as we continue our journeys all over Washington State to get to know the real people behind our food. Now back to the conversation with Lindsey Van Dyken at Pangborn Farms. So how are they grown? Like, I guess from the start, you plant like small starts?
Yeah, my husband actually propagated most of these himself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from cuttings?
Yes. He just cut pieces off and stuck them in the ground. They're very hardy and pretty easy to grow. I don't want everybody to know that, right? But no, everybody should have a couple backyard plants. We've some of our customers are like, "Can we take a clipping?" We're like, "Go for it."
Nice.
So, it's one plant isn't going to produce a whole bunch of fruit, but...
How long does it take them to grow up to, like, is this a fully mature plant here?
No, this is not. They've just been pruned, though, so they look really nice right now. This plant is about 4 years old, and it's been in production for about 3 years.
Okay.
So, I mean, it only takes a year, though, for them to be in here, maybe 2.
They probably don't produce as much at first, though, right?
Honestly, they produce really good at first.
Wow.
Yeah, this is our best producing field. I think there's close to 6 acres here. And then on the other side of my in-laws' house, we have another probably 6 acres. And those are really old. Those were the original ones that went in the early 2000s. They do not need to be replanted like raspberries, but they do get they do get like some brittleness on them, so we have to go through and prune that stuff off. And every 4 or 5 years we need a really good pruning, and we take them all the way down, and so we'll see the production go down a little bit. But a lot of it is just so many factors that we don't have control of. Weather mainly. Weather is our biggest factor for we have blueberries also, so that the blueberries, I mean, we're about half blueberry, half currant here, and we have almost no control of the blueberry prices because it goes commercial, and you hear the expected price at the beginning of the year, and they're like, oh, that's going to be so great, and then we don't get our final payment until the next January. So we don't even know how much we're making until we've actually
all those blueberries,
until we've
sent them
off, and pruned. So we've already put money back into it before we know how much we're making. It's a love, it is a hobby for us. I have a job. My husband has a job. And we make it work. His boss is really lenient with him during the summer, so he usually takes like 3 weeks off.
Nice.
And we just make it work. We hire some neighborhood boys, and they get the picker going. It's awesome. It's good to see the farm boys. And they're such hard workers, but they have fun too. We let them have fun. And that's how it should be. Kyle,
you have to.
My husband, Kyle, he grew up, on this. It was 130 acres originally, and we had a whole bunch of raspberries. So he grew up on the raspberry picker, throwing berries at each other and catching frogs. And it's amazing what you see when you work on a picker. It's kind of funny when I see people in the grocery store and they're like, everything's so perfect and packaged. And I'm like, you don't know what those things have been through, right? They've got to go through the machine and then the washing and all of that, right? So for me, I'm just like, we don't worry too much about that anymore because after seeing, but I'm a city girl. I actually grew up in the city. And
where did you grow up?
Near Seattle, Edmonds area. And my parents had a business down in Ballard on the Shipyard Canal, and so I grew up being at their business, doing whatever they needed during the summertime. And it was such a summer heavy business that we didn't get to go on like family vacations. And
sounds like berries.
And I was like, I'm not going into this when I get older. And then of course my husband becomes a farmer, and I'm like, we don't have summers again. So, but we really enjoy spring and fall. Spring and fall spring's my favorite season anyway. So, we make the most of it.
So how big will these blackcurrants get?
We usually don't let them get too big. I mean, blueberry bushes will get so tall. We have blueberry bushes that are over our head back. There, but
they will get bigger than this though.
They will, but we like to keep them, at least we take all the bottom parts off and try to get them to go up. I mean, if you see our other field, it's pretty close to this as well. So they're about that same height. We just prune them down, and every year they lose all their leaves, and they go into a great hibernation. They need a certain amount of cold, so they can only grow in the northern part of the country. And it's like we don't know what's happening with weather anymore. We have really no control over what's happening, what's being done, by it. And So we do the best we can. And this year was actually really funny. My husband's like, the berries are looking real good. You know, the plants are looking really good. And I'm like, stop.
Don't jinx it.
No, I'm just like, no, we have no idea.
Yeah,
And somebody's like, oh, are your berries today? How are your plants looking? I'm like, ask me on July 15th.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Well, that was
then.
all the years that he farmed raspberries. That was my dad's answer. It's like, well, I mean, things so far look okay, but don't really know until you get out in the field and pick them.
We have had years where when we had raspberries one year, I remember the day before we started picking, it was an absolute torrential downpour all night. And I sat up all night and I was just in tears. It was so emotional, right? Because I knew what it meant. I knew it meant moldy berries. And it meant my husband had to go and put planks on the ground so that our picker wouldn't sink in the peat ground. Because we have a lot of peat ground. All our blueberries down here in peat. And
heavier, deeper soil. Yeah.
It's like quicksand. And they've filled it in with gravel and it just keeps going. Like you can actually stand on it and you can feel it. This used to be a lake. This all used to be a lake here. So it's really good growing area.
Super rich soil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's the good and the bad with the super rich soil, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we've also had years where we've gotten worms. Currants have we've talked to a lot of people who have just a few currant bushes at home. They're like, I just keep getting worms. And yeah, it happens. And so we really don't know until we pick if everything's okay. You have to pick and let it sit. And
picking, you were talking about the machine or the picker. So you have a mechanical harvester for these.
Yes, we're very lucky. We have a Latau blueberry harvester. It is it's a platform and you sit on top of it, so you're not down below. It's made for blueberries, but it's really very effective on currants as well. The currant bushes we generally will pick the currants once or twice, and that's all we usually get from them. The blueberries, though, we can pick up to 3 to 4 times, but we hit the currants hard, and we like full beater. We're going as slow as we can, get everything off, and it really does a lot of damage to our machine. So a lot of all the beater sticks, they all got to get replaced, and so Kyle's in there,
That's hard work. I've done that.
Oh, yeah, right?
Hammering new rods into the rotary heads, yeah.
Yeah, I hear every morning, it's like we've lost some, so yeah. Him and his dad work really hard at maintaining all the machines, and Kyle does most all of the repairs on the machine, which is it's a 20-year harvester. So stuff goes out, a lot of hydraulic stuff.
Yeah.
And we've had a point where the hydraulic oil it's so like our regulations are super tight. And so if there's any oil on the machine, like you have to take it back and clean it all off. And we have to go through a GAP procedure for
good agricultural practices.
Yeah. We hire an independent consultant that flies here and goes through all of our paperwork. And last year, a whole bunch of regulations changed. So this is our GAP book. And
so those are all the rules that you have been designed, not just generally, but specifically for your farm.
For the farm, yeah. We have to have SOPs for everything. And I mean, we're a small farm, like tiny, compared to some of the farms in Whatcom County.
Yeah.
And we still have to pay the same amount for the GAP, all of that.
So now what's that generally for? Like food safety?
Yes, it is. It's making sure, animals aren't near the field, that, there's not, we're getting our water tested, which we used to do all of that anyways, but it's taking care of making sure that all of the chemicals, fertilizers are, put away properly and applied properly, and which we did before, but it's just record,
Right.
being able to go back. They basically, if there's a problem, they want to go back and see where it started so that they can remediate,
Yeah.
make it okay. So
Traceability.
absolutely, that's their number one concern, and so we understand that completely. And it's usually a 2 to 3 hour long interview process every year. They drive around the farm and look at everything and make sure we're in regulations. And Kyle's always so nervous because it could mean whether or not we could sell our berries to the commercial, which all our blueberries go to Raiders. And then any of our leftover currants go to Pacific Coast up in Canada, which we're very lucky because our neighbor ranch, he has trucks that go to Pacific Coast, and so we just drive them down the road, and it works out really well. But then, last year I think we bought a new flatbed truck. We're like, okay, we got to get that. And year before was we need a new 4-wheeler because it's stuck in second gear. But it's a very much like make it work type of farm because there's just no profit. And for me, I see all of our customers, they need those berries, right?
Yeah.
So we try to make it as affordable as possible. And we're also, we do have one main competitor, which he does most commercial. He doesn't deal with individuals, so it's all commercial stuff. So we used to get some more commercial orders, but over time we've kind of gone more to just the public.
Direct marketing.
Direct, yeah.
Now, so is that a you pick kind of thing?
They do not you pick the currants, no.
Oh. Is that, because I know a lot of people aren't aware of this, like GAP rules won't necessarily allow anybody, like you can't even have a visitor without approval and all that into the field to protect that food safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we don't have people out here. We just have our picker. And honestly, to hand pick currants is horrible. Like it's,
yeah, I bet.
We have so many people who are like, oh, I love currants and I hate them because my grandmother used to make me pick them for, 16 hours a day, and then we'd have to like pick them apart, and then we'd have to process them. And but they're like, the smell, it's so nostalgic, and the smell is so powerful. I love the smell of currants. But that is also an acquired scent, right? It's just when I smell them, I'm like, oh, it smells so good, and it's just smells like summer to me.
I have a kind of a, as I've said on the podcast before, kind of a love-hate relationship with raspberries for the same reason, because they smell like work to me. Yeah. I've never been in love actually with eating raspberry. Everybody loves raspberries, right? And I'm just been kind of ho-hum because when I smell them or taste them, it's like, oh, this is like, but it's still a nostalgic thing that when I smell it, but it's not what other people smell. When other people smell it, they think, oh, I'm going to put this on ice cream, or I'm going to put this, and I'm like, no, thanks. No, I've eaten so many raspberries over the years.
Yeah. You get to the point where you're like a quarter of the way in the season, you're like, yeah, I'm done. Yep. I've had my allotment. I've had my 1,000 pounds of berries or whatever,
People will say, and you probably get this too, it's like, oh, you can eat as many as you want. It's like, yeah. I don't.
Yeah, no, not really. My husband makes fun of me actually because every year I pick a whole bunch and I freeze them, and then they're in our freezer in the springtime, and they've not been eaten. And he's like, "Are you sure you need all of these?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. I need all of them. They look beautiful. I have a whole bunch of raspberries. I do make raspberry jam. I can't eat store-bought raspberry jam. I'm a princess now, so
same. I've been spoiled.
But it's so easy. Like I used to think it was a lot harder. I'm like, no,
it doesn't have
it's
to be hard.
Sugar, pectin, and raspberries.
Now, pop quiz for you. Put you on the spot. Cooked jam or freezer jam?
I like freezer jam.
Freezer jam all the way. It tastes way
fresh.
more like fresh fruit.
Yes, it's fresh, right? And
Cooked jam has just a little different. And some people prefer that, and I respect that because that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
But when you know the flavor of the fresh fruit, it is
Freezer
so much.
jam.
Yeah. All the way.
That and I'm not a big. I don't like my stuff super sweet. I am more of a tart, savory person. So I would love to be able to put currant jam on, like some really like, maybe a steak. But it's really good with lamb, and I don't eat lamb, so I don't know. Maybe I can try. I don't know. Something new.
Yeah. What about on like turkey at Thanksgiving? Because I think of cranberries then, but I'm not a cranberries on my turkey kind of guy. So
I like cranberries, but I don't think I put them on meat. Yeah. People put them on like a really like stinky cheese, and that goes really well together. So I've been trying out different jams because I've wanted to make a jam out of ours. Yeah. And just have it as kind of diversify the farm a little bit. I was just kind of worried, I want something for my kids to be able to have. I don't want to have to sell this to, pay to farm, which we were kind of doing before with the raspberries. So I wanted to make some products, and I may still. So I bought all of the jam that I could, all the currant jam, and every once in a while I'll take one out and try it, and I'm like, oh, this one's really good, or this one's way too sweet. Yeah. The ones that I found to be the best tasting for me are the ones sweetened not with sugar. They use grape juice, and that's like Greg Quinn. He does Currant C, and it's all about how much vitamin C is in it. And he was one of, like, when I was kind of coming into the farm, I guess you could say, I've only been working with the farm for like 3 or 4 years. Before that, I was pretty wound up and just taking care of my kids. And Kyle did the farm stuff, and his mom and dad would help out. I mean, they're both retired, right? Yeah. But I was hands off until they sold that 90 acres, and then we ended up moving into the 3rd generation farmhouse. And it's just so interesting because Kyle grew up in that house, and they've not always farmed berries. They farmed, I think they moved here in the 80s. They bought the farm, and it was a dairy farm for a really long time. And dairy farms at that time, like back in 94, 95, it just went downhill.
That's when my grandpa retired, 1996.
Yeah.
And he actually dairied just over there. And I live in that farmhouse.
Yes, down the road from me. Yeah. Small town, right?
Yeah. And how did you end up meeting this farmer guy? I hear you lived in Seattle, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably aware now, people who live up here, up by the border, are kind of just like, that's Seattle. They don't make a difference. Yeah. There's no difference between Ballard or
Shoreline,
even Bellevue. I mean, that's just Seattle.
Yeah. It's down south. Yeah. I say down south and people think it's California. And I'm like, no, it's just down south because I've been in Linden now for 18 years. Yeah. So, I've lived half my life up here now.
Yeah, crazy.
So it is crazy. But, I ended up, I was working at a cell phone place, and one of my coworkers, I was like, I really want to move to Bellingham. I'd really like to, go to college there, but I should really just go to community college and live at home. Yeah. And this guy I was working with, he was just a hoot. He's like, just go, man, just go, just pack up your stuff and go. And I was like,
which is true at that time in your life.
I was 18. I was like, all right, I'm going. And I found a roommate online. In 3 weeks, I had a place to stay, a roommate, and a job up here in Whatcom County. And then I went through a year of community college because I was going to transfer into Western, and I met a girl from Linden, and she just absorbed me. She's like, come with me. You're our friend now. And I had actually, prior to that, when I was living in Seattle, I was doing some modeling as a teen, and I met this girl, and she said she was from Linden, and I'm like, where's Linden? What's that? I've never even heard of it. And she's like, oh, it's a real small town, near the border.
Yeah.
And she told me a little bit about it. And I didn't grow up in a church. I didn't grow up with any sort of religion at all. We were business owners, and my parents were very busy. They did the right thing. They, were respectful of other people and honest, and, they kept their integrity intact. But it wasn't, we never praised God, right?
Right.
And so moving up here and meeting this girl who was like, yeah, there's a church on every corner. I was just like, what?
Which there literally is in Linden.
There is. And I'm like, what? And so then I it turns out these two girls knew each other because, it's Linden and everybody knows each other.
Right.
It's getting a little different now that we have more people moving in from out of state and everything. But they knew each other, and I just thought it was so funny. And so, I was just absorbed by this group of people and ended up meeting my husband at a party in a backyard. And, really the rest is history. His dog came and sat on my lap and was eating treats out of my hand. And he was just like, he doesn't do that for people. Like, who are you? And we exchanged numbers, and literally the next day we started dating, and we haven't looked back.
Awesome.
So we've
but again, you were a city kid.
Yes.
And when did you decide, okay, I'm gonna
So he wasn't a farmer.
join the farm life?
He wasn't a farmer when I met him. He was working maintenance at a hotel. And his parents were farmers, and he told me I'm never farming.
Heard this before.
Yeah, he said, I'm not farming because I don't, you can't control any of it. And it just became a point where his parents couldn't handle all of it. It's 130 acres, and just the two of them, they would hire people out during the summer to pick, but they needed Kyle. And they kept, he stayed on and helped out for a really long time. We had a lot of really lean years. And then I was a stay-at-home mom, too. And we have a bit of an extra needs child. And so I didn't have a lot of choice. And so we farmed for a really long time. And it was really hard for me. Emotionally, really. I was like, can we just stop and get a job and make money now? But now that I look back at it, we have 40 acres out here, and Bob and Betty are retired, and a brand new house they just got to build. And our house is 100 years old and needs a lot of work. You can probably tell from the siding. Yeah.
Mine's 80 years old, so I know how it goes.
Yeah. There's always something. But we've got lots of good friends that help us piece it back together. And, we're like, maybe one of these years we'll have a good year and we can do it. Because we've had a couple of years where the price was just incredible for blueberries, and you make a lot of money. But that doesn't offset the other 10 years.
You better save that money.
It doesn't.
Because you're going to need it later.
Yeah. Yep. And it's usually we've got to pay this and this and this off. So we finally own our own. We own all the equipment. We own the land. Now we're finally starting to see, we've got to pay for the fertilizer and diesel. But that's going to be a lot. And as a business oriented person, it's such a delicate balance between making sure our customers get what they want for a fair price. I don't like to see people overcharged, but at the same time it needs to have value, and we put so much work into it, right? So but it's food for people, and that's important. There's not a lot of people who are willing to grow food and willing to do that hard work anymore. it's back-breaking labor. During our busy season, me and Kyle start at I get up at like 4, and we're out here by 6, and he's got to get the machine ready. And then we check all the stations, I check the U-Pick stuff. And the U-Pick is usually about a month long. So we usually don't end up, we work until people leave. We don't have a closing time. We just say stay until it's not light anymore. There's a lot of people who want to come after work, and we have a self-pay station, and you can just text message us or call us, and we'll get you change. And we're really laid back here. It's really nice. And I would say the majority of the people that come are repeat customers, and like we have a playground, all the kids. I mean, I counted one time there was 30 kids on our playground.
Wow.
And I mean, that's only like 3 families too.
Yeah.
And so then my kids get to go and play with them. And the year that COVID was just, the first year, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, with all that.
Yeah, we were like, oh, are our people still going to show up? What is it going to be like? Are we, masking outside? Are we going to have to designate rows? Which a lot of farms just shut down. A lot of the U-Pick farms were like, nope, we can't do this. And we're like, yeah, but currants kill flu viruses. So we're just going to go for it. And we're just going to continue on. So we survived it. Actually, it was kind of incredible. That was our biggest selling year.
I've heard that from others, that people had nothing else to do and they came out and they wanted food, fresh food.
Yeah. We had so many different people show up. But that was also the year that I spent a little money on advertising. And I think it came, it came back to us. I mean, it was less than $100, I think, that I spent advertising. But most of our people come from word of mouth. So it's like, oh, you have currants? Oh, I need currants. I'm coming, And so,
especially since it is not a common thing at all for people who really like them. They're going to be like, okay, finally found a place.
Yeah, and just even the funny thing is we've been supplying a lady with Blueberries who does some nonprofit work in Whatcom County, and for years we have been, and her business partner is Russian, and she's like, I want you to come out and see the farm, and he's like, wait, you have currants?
And he was like, sweet.
He's like, my mom is going to be so happy. I mean, I think he got like 200 pounds of currants, and they're like, yeah, they made, he's just like, can I have more? I'm like, we're done. Like, you came too late.
Shoot.
I'm like,
yeah. What's the season before blueberries? Like
at
the same time as raspberries, like July?
Yeah. So raspberries are pretty. Usually raspberries are like end of June, beginning of July. If it's the typical season.
Right.
And then blackcurrants are generally the second week and third week in July. And then blueberries will come on, our blueberries. The Duke field that we have is the earliest field, and that's our U-Pick field. So it actually coincides really well with our current time. So people will come early in the morning, pick their blueberries, wait for us to get done. Usually we start picking at about 8 because we can't pick wet berries. They need to be fully dry, or they stick together, and our customers don't want them. They need to be dry. So we'll pick until about 11, and then offload under our farm stand tents, which are in front of our house. And that has just changed and morphed into like bigger and bigger. And now I'm in it now. So I'm like, okay, let's make this more comfortable and beautiful. And, my husband originally, he just had like a tent with a table on it. And I'm like, let's get some signage so people can find us. And
aesthetics, what?
Yeah.
How can people find out more if they want to find out more about your farm?
We have a website I manage. I actually built it into, that was one of my things where I was like, I can do this. And I need to start making an income. So I helped us get online, and that actually prompted me to go back to school and become a graphic designer. So
Nice.
it was just like, this is my nemesis was the farm, and now it's become such a blessing. And
That's awesome.
now we get to live on 40 acres and a 100-year-old like historic house, and I find myself really, really fortunate, especially with the way real estate prices are going on around here. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely exploded.
Yeah.
So
pangbornfarms.com, I'm guessing.
pangbornfarms.com, and we're on Instagram and Facebook, Pangborn Farms. There's not a
Awesome.
whole lot of people out there with that name, so it was pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah,
again for
yeah.
having me out here to the field and right in the bushes and actually see black currants and learn. I've been driving by these since people have been growing them around here for 15 some years now.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
But
yeah.
I didn't know a lot about them.
Yeah.
And so this is really cool to get to learn more about it and hear your story as well.
I should have had some here for you to try. I've got some frozen. I actually told my coworkers, and they're like, bring some in. We're intrigued now. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to like them, but
acquired taste.
It is. Yep. But I've heard it makes really good wine and really easy to make currant wine. So if there are any wine drinkers out there who want to make currant wine, come see me this summer.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. I appreciate it.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.